everyone, my name is Savannah Smith, and my speech is on Vikings. I don't have anyone to be my audience, so you guys are going to be my audience. You probably think that Vikings, their history and their culture wouldn't be a very interesting topic, but you'd be wrong there. There's a lot of misinformation surrounding Vikings, and their culture and history is extremely interesting. History has misconstrued a few facts about the Vikings, and I'm going to address some of those here. Vikings were actually an extremely clean people. When you'd think of a stereotypical Viking, you would think that they're dirty, probably covered in blood and guts, and just all around not a super primped up people, but that's wrong. Archaeologists have found grooming tools that they would have used to keep their hair trimmed, keep their beard trimmed, and they bathed at least once a week, which is actually quite often for that time in Europe. And when you look at Viking imagery, they all are very, very neat. And when you think of Vikings, you generally think of all of them being male, but that's also not true. There was a grave found that was a highly decorated warrior. They were obviously very high ranking. They had 2 horses in the tomb, all sorts of swords. They were well dressed, and everyone just assumed it was male. But then they took DNA samples from the teeth of the bones, and it found out it was female, which pretty much destroys the myth that all Vikings were men, and that the women just stayed back at the settlements taking care of things. They would have been on the battlefield too, fighting alongside the men. These myths were spread through misinformation and just inaccurate technology, and as we get better technology, we'll be able to discover things more accurately and get better details. These myths existed because of that, and people just assuming wrong things. And some of the myths just fit stereotypes that we're used to, like dirty Vikings and them all being men. For Vikings, their religion, most of Scandinavia in that time frame was pagan, and the Vikings had many gods, such as Odin, which is the one we probably all know of. But when Christianity became popular, the Vikings had no problem accepting another god alongside all the ones they already had. Religion was a part of their everyday life. They didn't really have special ceremonies for it, like going to church, talking to priests, having bonfires. But they did sometimes erect small shrines to do their private worship with. They weren't super outspoken with their religion. Well, they were, but they didn't have big gatherings about it like we do in Christianity and other religions. The Vikings were a people of Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and most of northern Europe. They were seafaring raiders that pillaged small towns and settlement for gold, food, trade goods, women, animals, whatever you can think of. And the word Viking comes from the Nordic word for pirate. Vikings, for their dead, they would bury them in huge tombs filled with all their items from life that they can take in death with them, such as their horses, their weapons, jewelry, their finest clothes, so that when they go to Valhalla, which is the Hall of the Fallen, where all the dead warriors go to feast with Odin, the god of gods for them. And when they're in Valhalla, eventually they'll fight with Odin in Ragnarok, which is the war of the end of the world, basically, where all the gods are fighting and warring until everything is destroyed. There are things called skalds, which is a sort of Viking bard that recorded the tales of great warriors and made poems or songs about them to sing, so they could spread their history in a way that isn't writing it down. Most of the songs and stuff that we see are written with runes, which is an ancient letter system that they used. Most of the ones that they used came from a set called the Elder Futhark, which is also used in Germanic languages. Most of the meanings we get from the runes come from Icelandic poems called rune poems. Vikings they're seafaring warriors from Northern Europe. Their history is a wonderful mix of battles, bards, their religion, and everything else. it all compiles into what we know as the Viking Age of Scandinavia. And thank you for listening.